This is the I Don't Want a Divorce podcast with Dr. David E. Clarke. I'm continuing my series, which I started last time, Married but Lonely. This session is entitled A Master at Avoiding Intimacy. Now, keep in mind, these podcasts are based on my book, Married but Lonely, available on my website, davideclarkephd.com. That's Clarke with an E. Now, if you want to talk to me about your marriage, you can by using my phone advice service. I'm doing more and more of this. Spouses calling in from across the country. I charge the same amount as I do for an individual session, which is $170 for 45 minutes. You pay with your credit card. We set it up through email. You can call my office, talk to Sandy, my wonderful wife, and office manager. And for 45 minutes, I can get the background and give you a strategy moving forward that can make all the difference in your marriage. Could be that you're married but lonely, could be your spouse wants a divorce, could be your spouse has had an affair. We deal with marital crisis every day. And I've got the answers I think that you need. Also, if you want to see me in action on video, well, then we've got a number of videos on the website. I even have a YouTube channel, but you can find my videos. I've done a number of broadcasts with focus on the family, who I love. These are wonderful people, Jim Daly, John Fuller. Wonderful team, producers and folks there, support staff. Those are on the website as well. And you can see me speaking. I do a lot of speaking across the country. You can see me in action, talking about the top 10 lame excuses to end a marriage and how to create passion in marriage, and a number of other videos. All on the website, davideclarkephd.com. Now, I want to be very honest on these podcasts. I don't have it all together. I'm learning as I go along. Been married 37 years to the blonde, Sandy, and we have learned a lot, and that's what I put into my books and frankly these podcasts and all the things I do for couples. But we are still learning as we go along because marriage is hard. Being married to a woman is like really hard. Okay, I'm kidding. Yeah, that's true, but it's also just as hard being married to a man. Now, with all this married but lonely stuff, let me tell you, I didn't get it. I didn't get the whole intimacy thing for the first 10 years of our marriage. You can ask Sandy the blonde. I was the intimacy avoider. Now, I had a great Christian home growing up. Wonderful, godly parents, Bill and Kathy Clarke. And yet, I didn't get it. I didn't understand how to be intimate. Early in my marriage, I had a PhD in clinical psychology. We traveled the country, various schools. I got my PhD. It was a tremendous effort. Sandy was so supportive. And you'd think having a PhD in clinical psychology would help, right? In the whole intimacy department, it didn't. When we got married, like many couples, Sandy and I were on totally different levels when it came to intimacy. Sandy had a PhD in creating intimacy. Most women do. She knew just how to get deep emotionally and spiritually. I had a PhD in avoiding intimacy. Most men do. I had no idea how to create intimacy, but was a master at avoiding it. Sandy tried over and over and over again to get me to share personally. That's why she married me. Not just for my body. I thought that's what it was. Turns out that wasn't true. She tried to get me to share my thoughts, my feelings, to have deeper conversations. I avoided her over and over again. Look, I got Sandy pregnant 4 times, thinking 4 kids would distract her. It didn't work. She needed emotional and spiritual intimacy from me. Of course, that's why she married me. I finally realized that Sandy was unhappy, lonely in our marriage. I'm working with married couples in my practice, and I got the same problem at home. And frankly, it was my fault. Together, with God's truth in the Bible and God's help, we fixed the intimacy problem. Together, we learned how to connect emotionally, spiritually, and physically. The good news is you can fix the intimacy problem too. That's why I wrote the book, Married but Lonely. That's why I'm doing these podcasts. Now, the truth is your husband, like me, is a master at avoiding intimacy. He has been doing it his whole life. Like the great Houdini, he is a world-class escape artist. He will do whatever it takes to weasel out of a close, deep conversation. Do any of these favorite escape from closeness tricks sound familiar? Let me go over a number of these, and I have done every single one of these. I'm just telling you. And some still crop up. And like whack-a-mole, Sandy will whack them back down because she's tired of me acting that way. And what's fair is, and we have a deal where if I'm being an intimacy avoider, if I slip into the zone, I'm not listening to Sandy, I'm avoiding one of her attempts at intimacy, she has my full permission to call me on that. And my job is to say, you know what, honey, you're right, no excuse, and we can kind of reset. Again, have your man, or if it's the woman, the intimacy avoider in your life, in your marriage, listen to this podcast with you very honestly and see if they recognize themselves in one of these or more of these intimacy avoidance tricks. First, answering a question with a question. You ask him, how are you doing? Fair question. He responds, why do you ask? You're thinking, what do you mean, why do I ask? I'm trying to start a conversation. I want to get to know you better. So you ask, what are you thinking? And he responds with a question that makes no sense. Who knows? Meanwhile, you're thinking, duh, the only person who knows would be you. Also, there is the category pleading ignorance. Men are masters at this, and some women too. One of the classic IA escape lines to any question requiring personal information is, I don't know. That is a beautiful, inoffensive way to kill conversations. What he's really telling you is, I'd love to talk to you, honey, but I have no information. If only I could think of one thing that happened to me today, but I can't. Sorry, my mind's a complete blank. It's amazing how men know zilch when you are trying to get a conversation going. The fact is, he just doesn't want to talk, and this brain cramp is a wonderful excuse. Also, massive generalizations. You ask, how was your day? And he answers, fine or okay. Too bad you can't build much of a conversation on these two global replies. Of course, that is why he responds this way. He doesn't want to give you anything to work with. He has courteously answered your question and escaped any possibility of closeness. It's as if you asked, where do you live? And he responded, in the Milky Way galaxy. Well, that doesn't tell you anything. Or there's just no response at all. He simply does not respond to your questions. Like the great Sphinx of Egypt, his face and body are carved out of stone. Is he in some parallel universe? Did he hear me? Oh, he heard you all right. He is exercising elective mutism. He is letting you know that he doesn't want to talk about whatever topic you have brought up. There's also refusal to talk. You'll recognize this one. How many times has your husband told you, I don't want to talk about it? And its time-honored corollary, this isn't a good time to talk. He's tired, stressed, too full from dinner, the ball game is coming on, or he has a crick in his neck. He seems to indicate that sometime, someday, somewhere, there will be a good time to talk. Believe me, you won't live long enough to reach that time. Or there is letting you talk all the time. Another classic technique used by the intimacy avoider. While he is usually happy to let you talk, he doesn't listen too closely. After all, if you fill the air with words, he doesn't have to talk. There is no intimacy in a monologue. Intimacy requires a dialogue, so he avoids it by encouraging you to ramble on alone. Or snap, then leave. He'll get angry, snap some nasty comment at you, and leave the room. Since standing up and stalking out would be too obvious, he cleverly creates a ruse to escape your conversational clutches. If you get angry or exasperated, which is perfectly understandable, that plays right into his hands. He'll say you're overreacting, which gives him an excuse to leave. He doesn't really want to leave, yeah, right, but you made him angry, and so he has to split. Or there is drop it and move on. When you try to talk through a conflict, he will accuse you of dwelling on the past. Classic male technique. He fails to recognize that the past is not the past until you have dealt with it together and reached a mutual understanding. He may use statements such as, I said I was sorry, or stop bringing that up, to end the conflict. He believes that if you drop the subject, the problem will magically vanish. Too busy to talk. I did this to Sandy for years since I'm a workaholic. He is a busy, busy man with many important things to do. Sadly, that just doesn't leave any time to talk with you. He has to work, watch television, play with his phone, dink around on the computer, do yard work, fix things around the house, read the paper, sleep, or whatever else he can find to avoid conversation with you. Or there is the can't talk but can have sex. Ever try to talk and your spouse starts fondling you? You're trying to connect emotionally and your conversationally impaired husband is in groping mode. Why waste time talking when you can have sex? When you don't respond favorably, shocker, he gets offended and accuses you of rejecting him. Now, because you have made him angry and pouty, he certainly can't be expected to talk to you. The logical man. Since he buries his emotions, he is aware only of cold, hard logic. When you get emotional, and being a woman, that's perfectly normal, he doesn't see it as a normal, healthy female reaction. He sees it as a bizarre, unnecessary, and frightening monster that must be stamped out immediately. He tries his logic to talk you out of your feelings. Honey, you shouldn't feel that way. Honey, you're way too intense. Honey, calm down and let's look at the facts. Honey, listen up and I'll tell you how to fix your problem. Of course, his logic both infuriates and hurts you. Conversation over. Finally, the genetic excuse. If all else fails, your IA, your intimacy avoider, will resort to these old standards. Hey, this is who I am. You knew I was like this when you married me. I can't change. Bogus, bogus, bogus. It may be who he is, but he doesn't have to stay that way. Unless you were freeze-dried right after the wedding and put into cold storage, you both need to change as the marriage progresses. He can change, and he needs to if you're going to build an intimate relationship. Frankly, I had to change, and I did change. It's made all the difference in my relationship with the blonde, my Sandy. I tell husbands who use the genetic excuse, I guess if you had a huge painful boil the size of a basketball on your neck, you would just keep it there. After all, it's who you are. Baloney. You get rid of something if it's causing real damage. Your being an intimacy avoider is causing real damage to your marriage. Now, your husband doesn't mean to cause damage. He's a good guy in the scenario I'm describing in this book and these podcasts. But the fact is, he is doing real damage to you and to the marriage. Does any of this sound familiar? I'll bet it does. What your husband fails to realize is that all his intimacy avoidance techniques are hurting him, you, and your marriage. Sidestepping closeness is automatic for him. It comes naturally. He has no idea he is keeping himself and you from an intimate, joyful life together. Now, in the next podcast, we're going to cover more on the married but lonely theme. I'm going to cover why you married an intimacy avoider. You might find this very interesting. Again, go to the website for all things Dave Clarke related, davideclarkephd.com. That's Clarke with an A, davideclarkephd.com. You'll find this Married But Lonely book, all the books I've written for struggling couples, and even some fun books for couples that want to really get deeper. Marriage intensives are explained, individual intensives are explained, phone, email advice. So, until next time.